Oh, look out for that first step, Doc. It's a real Lulu.
Bugs Bunny?
You were expecting maybe the Easter Bunny?
You're a cartoon, you're not real.
Not really. If I weren't real, could I do this?
Oh, look. Is that Michael?
Michael!
It's Air Jordan. Basketball.
I thought. I did team Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan teams up with the Looney Tunes for a high-stakes basketball game. This week, we chat about using Mad Libs to create plot points, the enduring appeal of Jock Jams, and what Michael Jordan has in common with Britney Spears. Then we find out if Space Jam stands the test of time.
Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? James says gladiator with a glutton. Alan says as a father, blah blah. It's the test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today? Test of time, James and Alan have their say. Do the movies you love still hold up today?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Test of Time podcast. My name is Alan Noah, and you, sitting here in my home, what's your name?
Well, if this was Space Jam, like the movie we're reviewing today, the second build would be Bugs Bunny. But today, the second build is me, James Brief. Joining you as always, Al. How are you?
I am doing very well. I'm excited to have you back in my house. The last time you were here was when we recorded the Care Bears movie episode. The world was a simpler place then. It really was.
Basically, reviewing Care Bear films brings about death and destruction to the planet for 15 months.
Okay, see, now you're confusing correlation with causation, which is a big mistake, and you should know better. You're a doctor.
All right, what percentage of times after we've reviewed Care Bears films has the world gone into a global pandemic?
100%.
Okay, just saying. 100% of the time we review Care Bear films. Do you want to do Care Bears 2, The Next Generation next week, Al?
No, I don't.
Okay, I know why.
For other reasons.
Other reasons. You know, today's movie is a little unconventional because, like I mentioned earlier, the second build actor in the film we're reviewing today, Space Jam, is Bugs Bunny. But that's not even the weirdest part because Bugs Bunny's been in like a dozen films before. The first headlining star is someone who certainly has not headlined any films since and hadn't headlined films before then. That's the NBA superstar Michael Air Jordan.
Yeah, he was not an actor. He's not an actor. He is incredibly well known for his basketball playing, of course. And beyond that, he was known for being a spokesperson. Like, he was in a million commercials, and I guess you could say he was acting in those ads, but he had never carried a movie. And I was reading in some of like the behind the scenes trivia about this movie that, you know, there was some concern at Warner Brothers about, can Michael Jordan lead this movie? And, you know, they were talking about maybe having some other actors play a fictional athlete, but the movie is carried by Michael Jordan. And that's really what I assume got butts in seats, is people wanted to see Michael Jordan do anything and watch him play basketball with Bugs Bunny. Sure, why not?
And, you know, this is not the first time that Hollywood has found an actor and eventually leading actors in the world of athletes. The athletes we've reviewed are actually pretty good in some of the films we've done. Everybody move! Who's that?
Andre the Giant?
He was perfect in The Princess Bride. There could not have been someone cast as big as him that was going to be as charming and adorable as him.
Right. He was a wrestler, and wrestlers are athletic, and I guess you could say they're athletes, but in the world of wrestling, there's also an element of acting and performing and being a character and playing into all of that.
That's an excellent point. John Cena has been in a lot of films. He's in this summer's F9. But there's other athletes that their background is not in the athletic acting that you could argue wrestling is. You have people like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. What do we see him in now?
Of course, Airplane.
Right? And he was also in Conan the Barbarian. He's been in a lot of things. Kevin Garnett. He was in a acclaimed film a couple of years ago. You don't remember?
No.
Oh, it's a film you really liked by another actor who also did not get accolades until he was in this film. Well, no, he had one other film he got a lot of accolades.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Love this film, Al. Shabba-dabba-doo, when he was in an acclaimed film.
Oh, Adam Sandler was in Uncut Gems.
Correct, and Kevin Garnett was in that as well.
Right.
You also had Mike Tyson. I mean, he's been in smaller stuff, but you have a lot of athletes that have done this. And Michael Jordan, I think you make a good point that this was definitely Michael Jordan's first big acting role. But it's not like he hadn't done this stuff before. He was in everything when you were a kid. Fruit of the Loom, and I'm sorry, he was Hanes.
Yeah, he was Hanes.
Gatorade, and of course Nike. I did remember the commercials that apparently inspired this film. There was a series of commercials in the 90s. They called it Hair Jordan with an H, which is the other name for a rabbit. In the mid-90s, somehow Warner Brothers was able to successfully market the Looney Tunes characters as kind of like cool characters. Like they had like Bugs Bunny and Taz and like cool 90s outfits that people were really into.
They did sort of have a moment, and yeah, I did read that this movie kind of came out of these commercials, which is very, very bizarre. But I guess it just worked because Michael Jordan was so beloved by everybody who watched basketball. And if he can do the commercials, I could imagine someone in Hollywood saying, yeah, give him a movie, let him act with all of these cartoon characters, and he's not going to be doing serious thespian work. You know, he's going to be delivering one-liners because that's what you do in a Looney Tunes kind of world, right? And he's playing himself. You know, he's playing a version of himself. So it works, you know, like Michael Jordan can do this.
Works, but you know, when you hear actors that were in Lord of the Rings, any film where there's going to be a CGI character or characters that you can't physically interact with, they always talk about how it's incredibly difficult. I mean, you're acting and emoting to a tennis ball usually. Michael Jordan was probably in front of a green screen and, you know, interacting with, all right, here Bugs Bunny's going to kiss you on the lips, just like act surprised. And he's thrown into, I would say, probably a pretty advanced actor's experiment here.
That's true. That's a fair point. So if you don't remember the movie, like I said, it stars former NBA superstar Michael Jordan, along with some of his animated friends. When an evil cartoon businessman named Mr. Swackhammer needs a new attraction at his theme park, Moron Mountain, he sends his minions to Earth to kidnap Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes. The Tunes challenge them to a basketball game for their freedom. The aliens agree, then steal the abilities of NBA superstars like Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley. So Bugs and the gang recruit their own superstar, Michael Jordan. So I do not need to ask you if this was a hit, because I remember that this was a huge smash when it came out.
I mean, the film did pretty well. It grossed $90 million in America. It opened at number 1 on November 15th, 1996. And it wound up grossing $250 million worldwide, which interestingly places it as the highest grossing basketball film of all time, as well as the highest grossing Looney Tunes film of all time. You know, of course, there's some small ones from the 70s and 60s, but they tried to follow this up about 10 years later with a Brendan Fraser film called Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Yes.
And that was a big flop. And this moment, they made $250 million off this.
$250 million?
Worldwide, yeah.
Wow.
And Michael Jordan has this legendary name to it, you know, in your Babe Ruth and Pele. And let's review a little bit because he was drafted in the mid-'80s. He was picked 3rd that year.
Really?
He went to the Chicago Bulls, and it wasn't until like 6 or 7 years later that the Bulls, I think it was 91, they win the championship in 91, then they win in 92, then they win in 93. I mean, this is an unstoppable team. And you and I were from New York, so we were Knicks fans. I'm sure you were too at the time.
I was never really into basketball at all. And I will say that I knew plenty of kids who were big Chicago Bulls fans in suburban New York because of Michael Jordan.
This is not just suburban New York. This is worldwide. I remember going on a trip internationally in the early 90s. Everyone in the world had Chicago Bulls hats.
Sure,
This was a worldwide phenomenon. And The amazing thing about Michael Jordan is that in 1994, he has won 3 in a row, and there is no stopping this guy. It's almost boring NBA because it's another 50-point game. It's the best person of all time. And then suddenly, at the peak of his performance, he probably hasn't even peaked yet. He decides, I'm going to retire from the NBA. And it shocks everyone. And not only does he decide, I'm going to spend more time with my kids. No, he decides, not only am I going to leave the NBA, I'm going to join baseball, because that is actually the dream I've always had as a kid. And he wasn't quite good enough to make the majors, but he had played in high school, and I don't think he played at UNC. He wound up playing in I think a AA minor league team.
Maybe.
Which might have been a little generous, if I remember, because, it's sort of like a couple of years ago when Tim Tebow tried to go in the majors, and he was in the minors for a while. And a superstar from any walk of life that's at a minor league game is going to draw a big crowd. So I remember reading that the Michael Jordan minor league games were sold out everywhere he went because everyone just wanted to see a piece of this guy.
Right. I completely forgot that this movie sort of incorporates Michael Jordan's real retirement into its plot. It sort of like, puts a fictionalized spin on this real world thing that happened. And the movie opens with Michael Jordan as a kid. And the first thing you hear is the song, I Believe I Can Fly by R. Kelly. And because our podcast is the test of time, that immediately caught my attention of like, oh, who's a guy who hasn't stood the test of time? R. Kelly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this soundtrack was huge. Did you own this soundtrack? I did.
I did not, no.
Yeah, I owned it, and there were a lot of hits on this. I mean, I Believe I Can Fly. People were singing that for years as an inspirational song, and as a song by itself, I still think it's a lovely song. But his dad is playing basketball with him, which is bittersweet because his father was killed in a carjacking incident. It was terrible, and that was some speculation that that's what led Jordan to retire. And there's a famous part when he wins the NBA. I think it's '96, and he just grabs the ball and starts hysterically crying because the last time he'd won, I think his dad was with him. Gotcha. So it's a little bittersweet thing, and he tells his dad, Dad, when I grow up, I'm going to play for the UNC Tar Heels, and I'm going to play in the NBA, and I'm going to be a great player, and all this stuff, of course, comes true. And then we get into the credits, and I'll tell you, this song by the Quad City DJs, this song is such a 90s hype you up song. I was psyched after these credits started playing because let me play a little clip here. This is Quad City DJs right here. And it's called Space Jam.
Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. Come on and slam, if you wanna jam.
I honestly didn't know that the Quad City DJs had another hit. I remember The Train, or Come On Ride the Train. Was that the name of that song?
No, night train. Come on, ride the train.
But sure, fine. They had a second hit. And I really didn't remember a lot of this movie. I had seen it before, but I did not remember the whole alien theme park part of the plot, which is that there is this theme park on another planet, the moon, an asteroid, who knows. It's called Moron Mountain, which I guess is supposed to be a parody of Magic Mountain, which is weird because Magic Mountain is a Six Flags park, and the Six Flags park have a partnership with the Warner Brothers characters. You can go to one of those parks and get your picture taken with Bugs Bunny. So why are they parodying that? But whatever. That's not even the weird part. The weird part is the boss of this theme park is Mr. Swackhammer. He's voiced by Danny DeVito. And he's like, we need more attractions. So go to Earth and kidnap the Looney Tunes. And then these little like creatures are like, okay, sure. I was just like, wait, what the hell? It's just such like a random plot device. I was just thinking like, it's like Mad Libs, like you're writing a movie script and it's like your evil villain owns a blank amusement park. So he decides to send his blank to get blank. Like, where did they come up with that? It's just so random.
I think it's almost last minute because the real dilemma with this film was how do we get an athlete who's never done a movie before to act in front of a green screen? This athlete has now retired. He doesn't even play the sport that's in this. And they have all these problems. And then finally MJ agrees to do it and they get all the funding for the producers. And then they're like, oh, now we need a reason why Michael Jordan is going to play with cartoon characters. I don't know. Just make the bad guy wants to recruit the Looney Tunes. What, for a basketball game? No, not for a basketball game. For an amusement park.
It's so weird.
And, you know who the original voice of Bugs Bunny was, right?
Of course, Mel Blanc.
Right, Mel Blanc. He did like every character in the whole Looney Tunes collection, but he had either died by this time or he was quite old, and they wind up getting one of today's best voice animation actors. That's Billy West. We know primarily as what?
Well, I knew him first from Ren and Stimpy. Then he went on to Futurama. But yeah, he's done tons of cartoons, and he's great.
Yeah. And, you know, the aliens, they go into the Warner Brothers world, which is this weird thing on Earth, like underground. There's a little, like, doorway to get into the Warner Brothers world, which is fine. I guess that for all intents and purposes, it's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. There's a door to get into Toontown. Whatever.
Right.
There's a lot of things in these cartoons that if you're a fan of the old 7-minute Warner Brothers shorts, you definitely get more out of these things because Bugs Bunny was famous for always tricking people. Like, he would trick Elmer Fudd into, like, shooting himself because he'd trick Elmer Fudd into thinking it's human hunting season.
Right.
And the aliens go and they're like, hey, we're trying to find Bugs Bunny. And in a classic Bugs riff, he's like, Bugs Bunny, big guy with long ears, big puffy tail, hops around and looks exactly like me? Never heard of him.
Right. But then they kidnap all of the characters and they're going to take them away with them. But then Bugs Bunny is like, no, you have to let us challenge you for our freedom. It's in the book. And then there's like a book and he just kind of scribbles in, must let us challenge. And then all of the minions are like, oh, well, it's in the book. That gag kind of made me laugh. But then they're like, well, what can we challenge them to? And these alien creatures are tiny. So they think, basketball. That makes sense. Sure. But then what the aliens do is they steal like the talent and abilities from these other basketball stars. And these are real NBA athletes in cameos, or I guess not cameos. I mean, like they're substantial roles. There's Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Sean Bradley, Larry Johnson, and Muggsy Bogues.
Oh, yeah, Muggsy Bogues. Did you remember Muggsy Bogues?
No, I was not really into basketball.
So there's one thing you must have noticed about Muggsy Bogues. There's a reason why everyone loved Muggsy Bogues. Not only because he was a brilliant NBA player, but why?
He was super short?
Yeah, he's 5'3".
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's tiny.
Right. He was actually in the NBA for like 10 years. He was a fantastic player. And then the these little monsters, they transform into huge monsters. And by the way, this is a plug. In 2 weeks, we are going to be reviewing a film called Little Monsters.
That is true. That's a deep tease. I like it.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this before. I don't watch trailers now, but for some reason, trailers that I watched as a kid really stick with me. And I do remember that from the trailer, you see these huge guys and they go, "You've heard of the Dream Team? Well, we're the Mean Team." And the Dream Team was something that just happened in 1992, like a couple years before this. And that's when the greatest NBA players pretty much of all time, you had Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Magic was on it. Mm-hmm. And they walked into a gold medal.
That was in 92 Olympics.
That was 92 Olympics, yeah. I think it was over Barcelona.
Right. But the Looney Tunes are now completely outmatched, so they decide they need to get their own superstar to join their team, and they get Michael Jordan. And in this movie universe, Michael Jordan has retired from basketball. He's playing minor league baseball, which is what happened in real life. And he's got this assistant played by Wayne Knight, who most people know as Newman from Seinfeld.
Or Nedry from Jurassic Park.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, that's what I think of him as. But Michael Jordan is golfing with Stan, that's Wayne Knight's character, who is his assistant, and his friends Larry Bird and Bill Murray. I totally forgot that Bill Murray is in this movie, and Bill Murray loves sports. He loves to golf. And, you know, I don't know if he and Michael Jordan are friends in real life, but you buy it. You could just sort of imagine that these guys would be on the golf course hanging out, but they don't get to finish their game because Bugs Bunny kidnaps Michael Jordan, brings him to the Looney Tunes world, and, you know, explains that he needs their help to win their freedom from these alien creatures.
Yeah, and when he's explaining this, I love, there's a line, I give Jordan credit for this. He takes a couple digs at his baseball career because it didn't go very well.
Right.
And they're telling him, you got to join our team. You got to join our team because we really need help, or they're going to destroy our world if we lose. And he goes, guys, I'm not a basketball player. I'm a baseball player. And then Bugs is like, yeah, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Yes, it is funny, and Michael Jordan clearly did have a sense of humor about himself, but Bugs Bunny makes the joke at Michael Jordan's expense. So in the script, they could have said, you know, oh, that's true, you're a great baseball player, and they just changed it later.
Although, you think like Michael Jordan at the premiere is going to find out that they changed, I'm a baseball player. Well, sir, you're the greatest baseball player of all time, but can we maybe have a basketball game? And then in post, they change it to an insult?
No, probably not.
Probably not. He is hesitant to take them on until the Monstars start taunting him. Like, what are you, scared? And I guess it's a little Marty McFly-esque from Back to the Future Part 2 and 3 that we reviewed a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I didn't really get why Michael Jordan agreed to play in this game. The motivation was a little thin, but, you know, watching the movie, yeah, you know, you're going to see Michael Jordan play against these creatures.
Oh, yeah. After the NBA superstars have all had their talent stolen, they start playing, and there's a great scene when Charles Barkley, he's feeling down in the dumps because he finds a pickup game in some city, and the kids are like, wow, it's Charles Barkley, and it's like your dream for Charles Barkley to play a pickup game with you, but he sucks. He like can't even dribble the ball. You know, the kids are like taunting him, like, get the hell out of here, you fake Charles Barkley lookalike. I thought it was funny. And Charles Barkley, he is a character. I don't know if you ever heard his commentary. He is a very, very funny guy.
Yeah. And there's a joke where he's like in church and he's praying to get his basketball talent back, and he says, I'll never date Madonna again. Apparently he did date Madonna in real life. I knew that Dennis Rodman dated Madonna, but apparently Charles Barkley did too.
Yeah, there's some great gags in here. There's a part where all 5 players are walking around a hospital.
Yes.
And they're the doctor is standing next to Muggsy. A couple players are behind him. And the 3 players all hit their heads on the ceiling, like some beam, but Muggsy and the doctor don't. It was so funny. I actually laughed out loud. I rewound that and watched it again.
Yes, that was a very, very funny moment. I had that in my notes too.
Oh, and then there's a funny joke where they go to a psychic to try to find out how to get their powers back. And the psychic is like, I sense that aliens have come and kidnapped Bugs Bunny, who then kidnapped Michael Jordan and is going to put them in an intergalactic showdown. And they're like, okay, thank you very much, lady. And I thought it was funny.
Yeah, good gag. And meanwhile, Michael Jordan is training with the Looney Tunes, and most of the Looney Tunes are not great at basketball, but then there's a new character, a new Looney Tune who is created just for this movie, a female bunny named Lola Bunny, who is very good at basketball and Bugs Bunny is in love with. And that's basically all you need to know about that character. She's a girl bunny. She's good at basketball. Bugs Bunny likes her.
Some of the cartoon characters have had to go back to MJ's house to get his sneakers and his UNC shorts. I thought at first that this was done to kind of get around the NBA logos and stuff, and it'll be easier for him to wear his Tar Heels shorts. But no, they show plenty of NBA stuff in here. So I'm not sure why he wears his Tar Heel shorts.
I don't know. I mean, the scene of them going back to his house is just to kind of involve the kids a little bit, like
Exactly.
Michael Jordan's kids.
Yeah. When they're recruiting him for this game, there's a line that Stan says to Michael, and he says, come on, Michael, it's game time. Slip on your Hanes, lace up your Nikes, take your Wheaties and your Gatorade. We'll grab a Big Mac on the way to the ballpark. And all of those things are all things that Michael Jordan endorsed, and probably not all the things he endorsed.
Yeah, it was just like a handful that they could fit in one line in the movie.
Yeah. There's one part right when the big game starts that I did kind of find weird. There's a lot of these sports films, your Mighty Ducks kind of films, and there's always a point in the film when they get a little too serious about it, and someone reminds them, hey guys, it's just a game. Most important thing out there is not to get a touchdown, not to get a home run, but to have fun. And that's a great lesson for kids.
Sure.
But Michael Jordan says this to the Warner Brothers characters before they go out for the show that's going to basically determine the fate of their lives. And he goes, remember guys, the most important thing is to have fun. And I thought, no, Michael, this game now it's for keeps.
Right. No, the important thing is to win. And Michael Jordan, of all people, should know and understand that.
Oh, yeah. And, they get to the stadium, and one thing that totally stands the test of time, I don't know if maybe just the early mid-90s kind of cemented what the soundtrack for all basketball games are, but it's basically the same music that they play today. Like you have your Pump Up the Jam, and they have all this stuff, and it's still the same music that they play pretty much today.
Yeah, that's the legacy of Jock Jams.
Volume 1.
Or volume 17. I mean, like, I don't remember how high they went up, but yeah, those songs are still great, like pump you up songs. And I feel like on Spotify, they don't have like the exact albums, but you can like search for that kind of playlist. And it's those songs like Pump Up the Jam and Y'all Ready for This and Whoop There It Is and all these things. And yeah, those songs are still played at stadiums and they do still pump you up.
Yeah. There's another funny gag at the beginning of the game where they're introducing all the lineup, and then they introduce Daffy Duck, and silence. Daffy's always being teased. I think it's funny.
Poor Daffy.
And, in your classic sports formula, they're getting pretty killed in the first half.
Yes, right. And then at halftime, Stan, Wayne Knight's character, like sneaks into the bad guys' locker room and he hears like what they've done, that they've stolen the abilities from these other NBA players. And he goes into the good guys' locker room and tells everyone. And it kind of doesn't matter. Like that revelation doesn't really do anything because what can it do? Like they're in the middle of the game.
I do like in the locker room, they are exhausted. They have been killed in the first half. I love that Foghorn Leghorn. Do you remember how he was depicted at halftime?
He's cooked?
Yeah, he's a fully cooked chicken. And I thought that was very funny. Or turkey, whatever he is.
Chicken? I don't know.
Is he a rooster? Whatever Foghorn Leghorn is.
Okay. And Michael Jordan gives this like quote unquote inspirational speech to his teammates about like how they're gonna go out there in the second half and turn the tide, but it's really not a good speech. Apparently he's not that good at that sort of thing. And then Bugs Bunny does this thing where he makes up magic water, which has absolutely no magic abilities. It's all in their head, but it's like, oh, if you drink this, then you'll be really good. And all of the characters believe it. And because they believe it, they go out onto the court and they start playing really well in the second half.
The second half, you're right. They do much better. So much so that Michael Jordan, he ups the stakes with the main bad guy, Dan DeVito's character. And he basically says, if we win, all the NBA players get their talent back, and the Looney Tunes get to go home. And if we lose, then you get me. And the bad guy's like, all right, I'm going to basically enslave you. It's actually kind of a dark scene where they show Michael Jordan like chained up and doing autographs. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of right now we're going through a weird thing with the singer Britney Spears, that we're finding out that for like 10 years, she was basically forced to do concerts and residencies that she was getting no money from, and they're like, we're gonna sue you if you don't do this. And just because it's in the news lately kind of reminded me of that.
Maybe that's kind of what Mr. Swackhammer wants to do, is have a conservatorship over Michael Jordan. But it is dark, and it also is weird for Michael Jordan to just raise those stakes for this game, because he's saying that he's willing to go to the moon or this planet or whatever to live the rest of his days as a theme park attraction. He's got a wife and kids, and he's just like, yeah, but I want my friends to get their talent back. Like,
yeah, Muggsy, he's just a short guy now. That's what Muggsy says.
Yeah, but he's willing to throw his entire life away on this one game.
Well, to be fair, the wife and kids in this film are not his real wife and kids.
Sure.
So he's throwing them away for actors.
Fair point. Speaking of actors, Bill Murray shows up in this scene to play some basketball. I was reading that apparently his character was just supposed to be in the golf scene earlier, but then he really wanted to be in the basketball game because he just thought it would be cool. And apparently he was maybe going to be in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but then that didn't work out. So he really wanted to have the opportunity to interact with some cartoon characters, which I think is awesome. I love Bill Murray, and the fact that he wanted to do this movie and this scene, I think is great. At one point, Daffy comes up to him and is like, "How did you get here?" Which I was thinking the same thing. How did Bill Murray get to this cartoon world? And he says, "The producer's a friend of mine. I had a Teamster drop me off." And this movie was produced by Ivan Reitman, who Bill Murray is friends with from Ghostbusters. And just saying that a Teamster dropped him off, that definitely made me laugh.
And I also love when Bill Murray shows up. One of the Looney Tunes characters says, "I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture."
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd might not stand up as much to younger kids, but that was a really funny line.
Yes, that is a good line. But as the game continues, the Looney Tunes find out that the magic water wasn't really magic, and then they sort of lose their momentum. And it all comes down to this final play at the final second. And Michael Jordan suddenly remembers that he's in a cartoon universe and cartoon physics apply. And he makes a slam dunk from basically the other net.
Half court. Because he famously made his slam dunk from the foul line in 1985 in the slam dunk contest, which is the logo for Air Jordan sneakers. And he flew from the foul line. So at this point, he leaps from the half court line. And it's not that he just remembered he can do these things. He had just learned that because they had a timeout with 10 seconds left. And Jordan even says to Bugs Bunny, he's like, 10 seconds left in the game and you just tell me that I can do cartoon physics here? They're fouling him like nothing else, the Monstars. They're basically tackling him. So yeah, you're right. He basically stretches his arm to the size of essentially half court, and he does slam dunk. And the Looney Tunes, the Toon Squad, they beat the Monstars. I think 77-76, which is a low-scoring game for Michael Jordan.
That's true. Also, when you mentioned the Toon Squad, you made me think of earlier in the movie when they're trying to come up with a name for their team, and Daffy Duck says, "We should name our team the Ducks," because get it? He's a duck. And then Bugs Bunny says, "What kind of Mickey Mouse operation would name a team the Ducks?" What kind of Mickey Mouse operation would name a team the Ducks? Disney has the Mighty Ducks, which is a real sports franchise. And I think that is one of a couple of digs at Disney. Apparently, the Warner Brothers producers were mad at Disney because they let their characters in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was a Disney movie, and they were hoping that Disney would reciprocate and let Mickey Mouse be in their Warner Brothers movie, this movie. And apparently that did not happen, and the Warner Brothers people were a little peeved, and so they made a couple of jokes at Disney's expense.
That's funny. I like that. The NBA players all get their talent back. And really, this film kind of ties into the real life story of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, now that you've realized you're a great basketball player again, what are you going to do, MJ? The real Bulls, they would always have this laser show as they started the games. And the fans go insane as they reintroduce Michael Jordan, but not the Michael Jordan we know. What's different about this Michael Jordan?
It's a different number because they retired 23 when he retired the first time.
Right, and you know that Linkin Park Jay-Z song, Encore?
No.
Oh, it's a remake of Numb. You've never heard that?
Oh, okay. I mean, I've heard that album, but it's one of the darker spots of Jay-Z's catalog.
Oh, I think it's a great song. But anyway, there's a great lyric in there because Jay-Z had done one of his several retirements. And then this was his encore after he retired, even though he came back many times after that. In that encore song, he says, "When I come back like Jordan, we're in the 4-5. It ain't to play games with you. It ain't to aim at you. It's probably to maim you." Jordan came back, and he wasn't that great as 45. And when he switched over to being 23 again, he took off and, 3 more NBA championships.
Oh, okay. Bad luck number, 45?
You don't remember this, Al?
Not really. I'm not a huge basketball fan.
You're not a huge NFL fan, but who's the quarterback that keeps winning Super Bowls the last 20 years?
Tom Brady.
Okay, at least you know that.
But I don't know like every detail about like what number he was on the Patriots and what number he is on Tampa Bay. Like, I don't know.
You know he's on Tampa Bay, though.
Yeah. But I know that Michael Jordan was on the Bulls and he won a ton of championships.
Then what team did he go to?
The Wizards?
Very good. You do know more than you think.
I know some stuff. But now that we've come to the end of this movie, James, do you think that Space Jam stands the test of time?
There's so many things that shouldn't go right in this film. Michael Jordan acting, Michael Jordan trying to be funny, but a lot of these things work. Michael Jordan is a better actor than I thought. I think it's probably fine that he didn't continue his acting career, but I think he's perfectly fine in this film. Every professional actor in this film is fantastic. Some things that don't really stand up to me. I think the animated scenes are kind of boring, like the solely animated and non-Looney Tunes animated scenes. I thought the movie slows down whenever like Danny DeVito's bad guy character's talking to his little minions. I'm not interested in those characters, only the Looney Tunes and Michael Jordan. Lola Bunny is a pretty sexualized character in it. I think it's perfectly fine that she's athletic looking, but like when she comes out on the court, the cartoon characters, their tongues are falling to the floor, and it's like, all right, if she's in the new one, it probably won't be like that, or they'll probably address something like that.
She is in the new one, and they do make her be a character that's more than just the girl.
Okay, good.
From what I've read.
I think the soundtrack totally stands up today. It's like you said, it's like a Jock Jams soundtrack. I mean, R. Kelly song notwithstanding, and there's also a Seal song in there, Fly Like an Eagle, which is a remake of, you of course know who originally did it.
The Steve Miller Band, of course.
Yes, the soundtrack is great. The film comes in at a kind of a lean, like, what is it, an hour and 40 minutes or something?
Something like that. It's
a tight film. I would probably eliminate a few of the scenes there, but the supporting NBA characters are all fun. I give Warner Brothers credit for two things. One, they waited 25 years to do this again. They did not do this every time there was like a new superstar that came up. And they didn't do it LeBron's first year. And another thing, I don't know if you know about this. Are you aware of SpaceJam.com?
I am. I was going to mention that.
So right now, actually, SpaceJam.com for like 24 years was the same website it always was, this horrible 1996 HTML website. They actually just did redo it for the new Space Jam movie, but you can click on like the upper corner and it will say return to the original Space Jam site, and you can see the 1996 site in all its glory. And I give Warner Brothers a lot of credit for never taking that down. I think somebody must have just had a sense of humor there.
I think it was probably just an oversight that like people didn't know it was there, and then the internet found out about it and they just left it up.
Right, it's probably something like that. But, all this stuff, it just comes together. This is a fun family flick. Is this a film made for me? No. But did I laugh out loud at a few parts of this? Yes, I did. And I found the film charming. I'll say, yeah, the film does stand the test of time. What do you think, Al? Does 1996 Space Jam stand the test of time?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is something that we talked about in our Who Framed Roger Rabbit episode, which is that the Looney Tunes characters are just not that big of a deal now. I forget if I told this story in that episode or not, but I took my kids to Six Flags Great Adventure not that long ago, pre-COVID, and the characters were there, and the kids could get their picture taken with Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and a handful of others, and they were like, who is that?
Same thing with my patients. Every once in a while, I have like a Tweety Bird Band-Aid. They have no idea who it is.
They're just not a big deal. And now there is like a new Looney Tunes cartoon on HBO Max. My kids don't watch it. But like when you think back to the old Looney Tunes cartoons, like how much of that crap stands the test of time? I mean, like the let's shoot people in the face, like, do those jokes still work? Does Yosemite Sam stand the test of time? Which is just like a parody of Yeehaw Cowboys, and Foghorn Leghorn is making fun of Southern people, and Pepe Le Pew is basically a rapist. I mean, like, I don't think a lot of that humor still works today, and maybe we're too politically correct and we shouldn't be so woke and blah, blah, blah. But like, I just don't think this stuff is funny per se, you know, like also I was never that into Looney Tunes as a kid. Like I just never found it that funny to watch the coyote like chase the roadrunner and slam into a wall again. I don't think the characters stand the test of time on their own. Maybe Space Jam: A New Legacy will bring new life to the Looney Tunes characters and people will really love Bugs Bunny again. And, you know, cool. But on their own, I don't think they are the big draw that they were in 1996. Also, this movie completely wastes Bill Murray. Bill Murray's in this movie, and they do nothing with him.
Well, they have a couple good lines with him.
Yeah, but I mean, they could have done more. They should have done more. Also, the fact that this movie is based on a commercial, I think kind of shows, like, this isn't a movie with, like, a really coherent plot. There's not a lot of story. There's not a lot of character development. There's also, weirdly, not even a lot of basketball. I felt like I was expecting more basketball in here than there really is.
I was surprised how quickly they got to the big game, too.
Yeah, I mean, and I get it. Like, that's what people want to see. But, yeah, like, they get to the big game really quickly, and then the big game is kind of over pretty quickly. It is worth noting that this movie was important to people. People loved it. People worshipped it. You know, people who loved Michael Jordan. It was a mainstream movie starring a black actor and his family, which you didn't see all the time. People really cherish this movie. I was reading some interviews with LeBron James and the team that's doing the new movie, and they like worship this movie and they have it on such a high pedestal. And that's cool. But I just don't think this movie really stands the test of time on its own. I guess in a way it does because there's a new one and people will want to see it. I watched this movie with my kids and they enjoyed it. They said they do want to watch the new one, which is cool. You know, we'll watch the new one on HBO Max. But I don't think the original stands the test of time. It's just not a really good movie.
I would agree with you that the moron mountain plot of the film is subpar. But once they get to the game and it's Michael Jordan versus the Monstars for reason X, who cares? Then I think it's fine. I would have remade that first act plot point. Other than that, I think the movie holds up.
I've heard about the plot of the new movie. It's about AI and like Don Cheadle is the bad guy, and I'm sure he'll be great, and I'm sure the story will make more sense. And LeBron James was really good in Trainwreck. I don't know if you saw that Amy Schumer movie.
No, but I know he was in it, so it's good that he had some acting in there.
I'll watch the new one. Will you watch the new one?
Yeah, I'll see it, especially because it's on HBO Max. I do feel bad for LeBron, though. You know, they waited 25 years. It's the same as Bill and Ted Fakes the Music. You could have done this movie any time in the last 25 years, and you wouldn't have gotten caught in this, this COVID trap. But, you know, LeBron's probably going to have one big headlining film and not make as much in the theaters.
Probably not, but people will see it. But that's going to do it for us this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about The Wedding Singer, starring Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. I remember really liking this movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. It's a 90s movie that takes place in the 80s. So it's like perfect for us. It's right up our alley. Until then, of course, we want you to talk to us at Test of Time Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Send us an email, thetestoftimepodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to write us that review on Apple Podcasts. If you forgot, you should do that. And we'll see you next time, everybody.
Bye.